This time of pandemic reminded me a lot about work that I read many years ago by William Bridges called Transition, Making Sense of Life Changes. It's an older book, and he went on to write others called The Way of Transitions. But what caused me to think about him is that he reminds us that there's a difference between change and transitions. To him, change is the actual external thing that happens, like a pandemic piece, a divorce, a death. The transition then is the internal kind of psychological and emotional response that happens from it. And so he talks to us a little bit about three actual stages that occur, one being the endings, that we have to grieve our endings before we can start new beginnings. That there's a neutral zone or a mid-time where there's disequilibrium. The old way is not the same anymore. We have a new way. And it's kind of like pausing in the air with the trapeze artist, where you're just ready to catch on to the next one. And so it's a time of disorientation. For some, you can move through that quickly as you get to the new beginning, as he calls it. But for others, there's a long period of this disequilibrium that occurs. And for us right now, we're just not sure, are we, about all the things that are happening and might be or might not be, which can cause us some, again, emotional kind of feelings and fear and worries. During this time, though, he tells us it's important we access our values and our beliefs. And we've done some work with that last week with Dr. Roberts, and also had you taken a moment to say, as you take a pause during this quietude, what strengths are you tapping into? What are you finding? So finally, Bridges tells us that once we get through that walking in the wilderness, we have a new beginning. Sometimes it can be envisioned, sometimes it's unknown, and we're not quite sure what that is. But the two things he reminds us to always stay present when there's major transition and change is to do the two C's: communicate and connect. Don't run and hide in a cave or do things like that, but be purposeful about how you're communicating and continuing to let people know about things and connect with people. Those two things are the most important piece. It's one of the things that we're trying to do as we move forward in this work as well. If you're interested in any more of Bridges' work, let me know. I can make sure that we put some information into the resource folder for you. Also along with this are what you're seeing right now are the three questions for me, which can be very helpful during times of loss or grief. And so many of us have heard about this lost. What is lost? We need to pay attention to it. It acknowledges our grief and the past connections. Our seniors who don't get a prom, they don't get a senior moment. There was a letter this morning from a baseball player who is not getting to do his spring season and move forward. And so we need to spend time there. But then we need to move into that next piece of what's left. What are our assets? What are the things that we do have? We have each other, we have our family, we still have skills of baseball and what's happening. Finally, we move to what's possible. How might we proactively shape our future? So I know many of you have spent time thinking about your own loss or loss of things in your families, and you have moved to maybe what's left or what's present, and finally, what is possible. This morning in your triad groups, we want you to, last week, remember that we looked at images, and first we looked at those images as we thought about them with our strengths. And then we thought about, how about a person in there? What did they think about? So with these questions today, I want you to kind of think about your team, your principal, your HIL team. For them, what is lost? What grief and past connections have they lost because of this huge transition of pandemic change? What's left? And what are the present assets that this team has and that they're learning right now in this virtual environment and moving forward? And then what's possible? What might be our future as we move forward in this area of HIL work with literacy and leadership.